Welcome to the DeadfootDiver podcast, where we discuss everything diving, technical diving, and also diving with disabilities and the benefits of it. Today, I am super excited to have on the show Dr. Neil Hammerschlag. Dr. Neil Hammerschlag is a world leading marine biologist with a passion for sharks. He also is the executive director of the Shark Research Foundation, the president of Atlantic Shark Expeditions, and also on the faculty of Black Girls Dive Foundation, just to name a few. Welcome, Dr. Hammerschlag. How's it going?
Good, good. How are you?
Good. Awesome. Very excited to have you on the show today. One of my favorite subjects in diving and the ocean is sharks. So I'm super excited to have somebody like you on the show today, and especially with the fact of that you actually want to get more disabled people out on your boats diving with sharks.
Yeah, that is a goal, and we think it's, you know, shark should be for everyone, and I love spending time in the water with sharks, and we're hoping to make our platform where we bring people out to see sharks more accessible.
Which is awesome. I mean, so how did you first get into an interest in diving and then concentrating on sharks?
So diving, I mean, I since a young kid, I always loved the ocean, and I was born in South Africa, and I was fortunate enough that my family would vacation off Cape Town or Durban, which is on the coast of South Africa, and I had exposure to the ocean that way, and just always wanted to be in the water and become a scuba diver. And even as a little kid, 8 years old, I would strap like 2 liter pop Coke bottles to my back and pretend it was a scuba tank and kick around in the swimming pool or the ocean. And so as soon as I could get my dive license when I was 12 years old, I got that. And yeah, and then when I was going to school, I was due to my love of the ocean, I figured I'd take a stab at marine biology. And so I was at the University of Toronto, and I didn't, obviously, there's no ocean in Ontario. And so
Sadly.
sadly, so I had to, improvise a bit. No, so in my kind of winter and spring and summer breaks, I would try to get experience volunteering with different research groups to kind of get hands-on experience in marine biology. And I happened to volunteer with an organization that was studying sharks off of California, and I was enthralled, so excited, and I really enjoyed the experience, but also gave me uh, reason to learn more about sharks. I did a lot of reading about sharks at the time, and that's also when information was becoming publicly available, that shark populations were declining globally due to overfishing. And so I thought, well, this is a great opportunity to kind of dedicate my own profession as I get into it to trying to conserve sharks. And so I've pretty much been headfirst into trying to conserve sharks through research and education ever since then. And that has led to being the executive director of the Shark Research Foundation, and also developing Atlantic shark expeditions, which runs out of Nova Scotia. It's an opportunity for the public to come and experience sharks, to go cage diving with sharks out here off of Nova Scotia, and to help support research.
I am super excited about that. Actually, as soon as I heard your program launched a couple of summers ago, I said to my wife, I said, I got to cage dive. Especially at that time, I wasn't even diving again, but due to the fact that you guys do it on a hookah, so you don't even need a scuba certification. And it has always been a dream of mine to be in a cage with a shark. So, what's it like to be in a cage with a shark?
Well, anytime being around a shark is amazing. Being in the cage is a surreal experience. I mean, some people can spend hours down there. Others, they get in the water and they're in this box, and it's intimidating. But it's definitely it's a bucket list thing for many people. And what a super way to have like a thrill and an amazing experience while at the same time contributing to science. Because while we're on the boat, we are collecting scientific data, and the boat, essentially, ecotourism funds the research. So if if the boat doesn't go out, then we don't get to do research to help conserve sharks. So every person who comes on the boat, they get to cage dive for science.
That's awesome. So what else do you do as part of your regular duties on the day when you're taking people out to do research?
So when we head out of uh, people will board the boat, we give a briefing, then we head out to a special location that we've selected where we think our chances of encountering a shark are high, and we'll involve the guests in taking water temperatures, visibility measurements, and then we then will deploy our cage, put bait in the water, and wait a while to bring in a shark. And during that time, we educate people about sharks, shark biology, shark research, shark conservation. We do like trivia, shark trivia, which is kind of a fun way to educate people. We do show and tell while we wait for the sharks to show up. And once the sharks show up, we get in the water and we do rotations. Everyone gets to see the sharks. And we document the number of different sharks we see, the species, the length, the sex of the shark, if there's any unique identification marks, and also if the sharks are showing any signs of injury or have hook wounds or entanglements with plastic or human debris. And we note all that information as part of our database, and we take photographs of it, and all of that goes towards our data monitoring.
That's amazing. Do you guys also tag them on the same day when you're out there?
Depends on the species, yeah. So we are doing research on great white sharks. So the species we get include blue sharks, mako sharks, poor beagles, and great whites. And for the great whites, we do tag them, and so we don't hook the sharks to tag them. So we are coming up with kind of innovative ways to be able to tag a free swimming shark without actually having to restrain them at all.
So what kind of methods do you do that so that the shark doesn't get hurt when you're doing it, tagging?
Yes, so we're last year we focused on using a pole that in the end of a long pole had a clamping system, like a spring-loaded clamp with a tag on that we would try to get it on the dorsal fin of the shark. That proved to be very challenging because you have to have the perfect angle, and the shark has to be really close by and has to be above the surface. And the biggest issue is, when you have a long pole with something heavy dangling on the end, it's really hard to keep it steady. And being the
Especially in
one
the
who was
wave.
doing the tagging, yeah, that wasn't easy. So you could basically touch the fin, but like just be off by a centimeter, and that's not good enough. So we're looking at ways next year to do it differently. I think we might actually use kind of a specialized tag that we can deploy with like a with like a well, I'm not going to get into it, but we'll see. Let's first get the permits, but we're coming up with a pretty cool way to deploy it.
I'm interested to see that. I would love to actually help you tag a shark. That
That
would
would be
be
cool to
huge.
have you on the boat while we tag a shark for sure.
That would be a huge bucket list thing for me. I mean, I've first of all, let's dispel some myths about sharks, like, and their danger. And because everybody, I talked to an experienced diver the other day. Actually, he's a really advanced instructor. And for instance, he was terrified as a child from Jaws. So his first reaction, "You're nuts. See, I'm not going in a cage. No way." And yet he's hand fed sharks and stuff. But to put him in a cage, forget it.
Well, the thing about being in the cage, I think it's a really easy way to observe sharks because you don't even have to really know how to swim because you're contained, right? So I think a lot of people are scared that what they've seen in some movies, not just Jaws, but that the cage could somehow get dislodged from the boat and dropped to the bottom of the ocean, which is not going to happen. Only in the movies. Our cage is connected to the boat. I mean, it's literally mounted to the boat. The top of the cage actually sticks out of the surface of the water. It's about a foot above the water, so you could be in the cage, and if you wanted to lift your head out of the water. So we communicate with everyone who's in the cage, because they can lift their head out. We can say, "Hey, how you doing?" And then they kind of crouch down and have the experience of the shark swimming by. So it's not a scary experience. I mean, the biggest, if anything, if the boat is obviously a moving platform, you got the waves ocean, so you could bang into the side of the cage, but that's the biggest risk you face is actually making contact with the cage. Not It has nothing to do with the shark, and it's certainly nothing to do with the cage coming loose or anything like that. It's a super safe experience, and it's definitely a surreal one.
Well, that's good to know because I mean, my wife, as much as she promotes me diving, I'm sure would like me to come back alive from doing a cage dive. So,
Yeah, we try to bring most of the passengers back, at least the ones we like.
oh well, that's good. So I'll remember to stand your bad side so I don't become shark bait. Because with my leg and stuff, I'll look like an injured fish anyway. So,
Yeah, well, that's the nice thing in the cage. They don't see you. They just see the shape of the cage. To be honest, so it's like as long as you stay within that cage, you're fine.
so what? When you do your tours, you run out of two locations to get different species of sharks, right? So,
Yeah,
what do you want to explain that and which sharks
yeah,
you're likely to encounter and when?
yeah. So this next year, we're going to be focusing from July 1st to Labor Day. So just the beginning of September, July 1st to September 1st, maybe even September 8th. We're going to focus off of the coast of Halifax. So we're going to leave off a place called Sambro, which is a nice kind of quaint fishing village. There's not much going on there because it is a fishing village. We're going to leave from a dock there where it's a relatively short run to get to offshore waters, and we'll be targeting there blue sharks, mako sharks, and port beagles. The most common we're going to probably encounter is the blue shark, which is an amazing shark to have around the cage because they are very curious. And once you get the blue sharks around, they'll probably stick around. And sometimes they come in multiple sharks at a time. So at one point, this year we had four blue sharks at the same time around the cage,
Wow.
which is amazing. The water is kind of crystal clear. It's you can get, I mean, for this type of offshore water, yeah, you could easily 50 feet clear, and you have blue sharks, other pelagics. You have mako sharks, which is is exciting. Poor beagles relatively rare, but they'll come in, but they don't stick around. They generally come in hot and they take a look around and then they leave. But these are pelagic animals that not many people get to experience. So it's a lot of fun and excitement. Then for kind of the later end of September and all of October, we're going to shift gears to the southern tip of Nova Scotia near Yarmouth. So it's another kind of fishing village that we're going to working out of called Lower West Pubnico, and there we're going to focus on the great white shark. We had success seeing them this past year at that time, and the water is definitely murkier. So it's definitely the visibility. Probably averages around 10 feet. So our goal is to get the shark super close within 10 feet. So that's not
Which
an
would be
issue.
amazing with a great white.
Yeah, so we got to get we trying to get that shark close with the goal of getting that is uh, those experiences are part of the research. The research is permitted by Department of Fisheries and Oceans species at risk. Um, because the sharks in Canada are protected, and we get to interact with them as part of the research, and people from the public get to experience that research, learn from the researchers, and see the research. Plus they contribute because any of the photos that the guests get of the great whites we use to actually build a photo catalog and ID database.
Oh,
So
awesome.
yeah, we work with our colleagues in collaborate with colleagues in New England out of Cape Cod who maintain a database of sharks, great whites they've been seeing there. They've ID'd a whole bunch of them. And so we send our photos to them and we cross reference it against their ID database, and we look to see, if it's the same sharks, different sharks, and any seasonality. And for example, I mean, last year our analysis showed that of the great whites that we get off in Nova Scotia, very few of them are actually the same ones that are being seen off Cape Cod. So it looks like maybe we have some sharks that visit us that don't visit Cape Cod. So it's kind of cool.
Wow, that's amazing. So when when you were starting Atlantic shark expeditions, did you have a lot of trouble getting permits to be able to do this type of thing?
Uh, for the white sharks, yeah, I mean, it's not hard to get permits in the sense that you obviously can, if you want to work with the species at risk, you need to demonstrate that the activities you're going to do is actually going to support their survival and conservation. So, I think the bigger issue for us was actually how our what we were doing was being communicated to the public. There are some people who were raising like an alarmist bell that somehow doing this research on the animals and bringing people with to see the sharks and experiencing it would somehow turn these sharks into man eaters that would somehow end up threatening people who are going in the water. But there's no science to demonstrate that, and it's not like we're out there feeding the sharks. You can't create a shark location. You got to go where the sharks already are, and the sharks are out there to eat seals and do whatever they're doing. We're just hoping to kind of you know keep an eye out on them, trying to spy on them when they're out there doing whatever they're doing, and they're going to do it whether or not we're there or not.
No, that's true. I mean, I've actually when you guys first started, I'd actually talked to people out in Nova Scotia because I have relatives out there. And some of them were saying that, they were worried because they were worried that all of a sudden there's going to be a lot more great white sharks around and stuff like that. There's going to be more shark attacks. So
Yeah, that's
what do you
uh,
have to say to these people?
well, I think, if they have the time to listen and want to learn, I can tell them what the science shows. And the science shows that, great whites, first of all, they're not going to, you know, they're relatively rare. It's actually not easy to get them to come by, even in a place where they're at. Most of the time they're doing their own thing. So we're just trying to get their attention with bait. And we don't operate in a place where there's a lot of people. We operate in a remote location, and if you go to a place and put bait in the water, it's not going to bring more sharks to that spot. You got to go to a spot that sharks already are at. So you're going to a spot that the sharks are already there, and the bait we put in the water pales in comparison to the amount of bait that's being put in the water by their natural food, which is seals and tunas and other things. They're the reason the sharks are there. And there's a ton of fishing activities that are going on. That are putting a lot of bait in the water. Again, that we're no match for in terms of the quantity. And then you're not going to create the sharks to even associate a boat or people with food unless you're feeding them constantly. If you have to feed the same individual constantly over time, and our goal is that's not what we're doing. We try not to feed the sharks. Every now and then they might steal a bait, but that's certainly not the intention. And also what science shows is from South Africa and Australia is that basically even where there are places where there are great white ecotourism going on, is that these sharks don't seem to become habituated. Especially if you're responsible and are out there, feeding them. And that's so. And we're out there. We're trying to study what these sharks are doing, and I think we can actually be a benefit to the community because we can tell them, where sharks are, when and where sharks are around. And I think that provides people with an awareness so they can make choices of what they want to do in the water. Because there's a lot of people that don't even know that there's great white sharks patrolling some of the beaches of Nova Scotia. And so I think creating that awareness for people is a very important way to help keep them safe.
I have actually heard that. I mean, my wife is like, yeah, you make sure you bring all your dive gear when we go to Nova Scotia, and then she goes to tell me, oh yeah, by the way, there's been some great whites spotted right off her dad's property almost. So
Exactly, exactly. But they know there's a lot of people who don't know. And it's important to educate people and also to understand what are the types of sharks that are here? How big are they? What are they here trying to do? What are the temperatures they like? What are the depths they like? What times of year are they here? When are they most abundant? Because that type of information not only is important for conserving the sharks, but also if you're a human water user and you want to limit your exposure to these sharks, then you might not want to go during peak periods when the sharks are around, or the type of certain temperatures or things like or places that they really like to spend time at.
So do you guys post any of your stuff on a specific website to track the sharks, or so that people can actually view and see like what the shark activity in an area is?
So we haven't successfully tagged any sharks yet. Like I said, this past year we weren't able to get any tags out. It was a challenge. So hopefully next year we will able to. And we'll certainly, we won't have like uh, at least not yet, have an app or anything like that where we can track them in real time. But I think we'll try to post, updates daily of on our social media of where any sharks that we tagged are at, so that people can learn from that for sure.
Which is amazing. So
Yeah. And
with
it's important because it engages people, like all the groups that do that type of activity. It's really engaging, and it creates awareness and knowledge.
no, I completely agree, and I mean sharks are have been endangered for years due to overfishing and stuff like that. Is shark finning still a big problem?
Shark finning is still a big problem, not in, Canada or the United States where it's illegal. I mean, many places shark finning is becoming banned, which is great. But shark finning doesn't prevent sharks from being killed. It just prevents the way that they're being killed. Shark finning, the definition of shark finning is not removing shark fins or selling shark fins. Shark finning is where you essentially catch a shark at sea, remove the fins at sea, and dump the body back in the water at sea. It's not illegal, for example, in many places where finning is illegal. It's where places where there are finning bans where you can't do that. Many of those places you still can capture the shark at sea, bring the shark back to shore, and then cut off the fins at shore and discard the body. So
Really?
that's not called finning. Yeah. So finning is the definition of finning involves dumping the rest of the body at sea. So if you bring the body back to shore, that's not finning. So even places that have where finning is illegal, you can still, essentially bring the shark back to shore and remove the fins. And it turns out that is also now created a bit of a demand for inadvertently for shark meat. So again, it's banning shark finning is not banning shark killing, or what it's doing is it's the way the sharks are being killed. So it as a result, it looks like in the last decade the number of sharks that are being removed from the oceans hasn't gone down. Shark mortality has not gone down really. It's about the same number of overall number of sharks that are being killed globally, and that's because now in addition to fins, there's also demand for shark meat. And but there is hope that it looks like areas that have very strong protections, like where like marine protected areas that where fishing or shark fishing is illegal, it is supporting shark recovery in those places. Also, places like United States that have very stringent regulations on shark fishing, it seems like those populations are faring better, and in some cases recovering compared to other areas where there are no policies in place to protect sharks or regulate the catch of sharks.
Which is unfortunate. Hopefully, these countries are going to tighten up their laws a bit. I mean, I've noticed just from traveling and stuff, seeing shark more on the menu for certain restaurants. I have not tried shark,
Yeah, neither
so
have I.
I I actually that's one sea creature I will not try. I will not eat a shark. I've eaten beluga and I've eaten narwhal from when I lived up in the Arctic, but I there's no way I'll eat a shark. It's not gonna
Probably wouldn't be
happen.
very healthy for you.
Well, another question I have about sharks is all this stuff I've seen over the last like year or so about the weird shark behavior down in Florida and stuff, where the sharks are basically swimming in circles, going nuts, and doing crazy stuff in where they're not normal.
Yeah, that's actually very scary because that's signs of some sort of neurological impairment, probably some sort of neurological disease that my guess is they picked up from some toxin in the water. So that's a scary thing because um, that's obviously, I mean, tells us that the oceans are not healthy. When if you find fish that are behaving strange and doing circles in an area, that's a sign that it's not a healthy ecosystem. It's not a healthy ocean, and it's probably a whole bunch of toxins that are causing some neurological diseases.
So, do you think a lot of that is from plastics? Because I know plastics is a huge issue in the ocean, and do you think that's affecting a lot of them as far as their neurological systems go?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm not an expert in what causes neurological problems, but I think there's I think when it comes to plastics, those are going to cause more. There's chemicals that associate with plastics that could leach into the water and into the sharks that might cause other issues with proper body functioning. I think it's hard to say. I think the neurological things like the strange circle swimming could be my guess. It might be a contaminant that's come through the water, like for example, gotten from land into the water. Through runoff from land. Some like, chemicals on the land that when it rains, it enters the waterway or come through the rivers or the canals. Um, there are toxic algae that potentially these toxic algae can arise from algal blooms. So when there's all these nutrients that can also come from land and runoff. So anything from nutrients, excess nutrients used on farmlands or fertilizers on golf courses, things like that. When that enters the waterway, uh, those essentially fertilize those nutrients turn are fertilizer for algae. And if you get this huge bloom of algae, some of those algae might be toxic and kind of they work their way up the food chain to the sharks. And then the sharks have consumed these toxic algae and can cause some of the issues we're seeing for sure.
Yeah, it's too bad. I mean, even in the Great Lakes, it's affecting a lot of stuff as far as pollution goes, and algae getting worse. And every year you see more beaches closed down due to algae and all kinds of other stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
So, when you second, sorry. Um, so what exactly have you seen as far as looking for your tours and stuff? What um do you think is going to be the how, luckily I can cut some of this out. um when you're running your tours, what exactly kind of protocols do you have in place to be able to help somebody who's disabled to be able to get on and off the boat and stuff and to make it easier?
Yeah, I mean, that's something we're thinking about and trying to evaluate. I think one of the big things is obviously having a dock that's relatively level with the parking lot and where there's a ramp to get to the boat and not many steps or no steps, and then having on the boat having there be no obstacles or clutter in the way, so an open deck space where there's no obstacles in the way. uh, and one of the big things that we found that can be a challenge is when you're actually out at sea and the boat is moving and rocking, that can be difficult to move around, especially if you if you are on crutches or a cane or have any sort of mobility issues of any kind, it's really hard when the floor is moving. And what people in the water, once they're in the water, they're fine. So and it's not hard to slip into the water. You sit on a platform, you slip into the cage. Getting out, there's a ladder, but you're so buoyant in the wetsuits, 7 mil wetsuits, that you basically float up, and then we can easily lift you out onto the platform. So it's really just maneuvering around the boat, even sitting in a chair and putting on a wetsuit. If the boat is really rocking, that's hard. So what we're trying to do is put in a gyro stabilizer to actually make it so even when it's rough out, the boat will be stable and smooth. A gyro stabilizer is essentially this huge weight that spins. It's on the boat. You put it in the hull, so it's kind of out of sight, but essentially it's spinning it so fast, 9,000 RPM, for example, that it counteracts the movement of the boat. So essentially, the counteraction of this weight spinning ends up making the boat a smooth surface and takes out as much as 95% of the boat's roll.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, because I know even for me, I mean, I have both legs, but my left leg being my weakest, and I've got metal in both. That on a boat, that was when I went to Jamaica a month ago. That was my biggest challenge actually, was getting on and off the boat. I didn't have too much trouble but I would have to get stabilized. I'd have to have somebody hold my tank while I was getting to the back and getting the water. Once I'm in the water, you're good.
Yeah, so exactly right. So we think this will be a huge first step to really making our shark cage diving more accessible, and probably the biggest one, because you're going to have this where you're spending most of the day is going to be stable, even in
Which is
relatively rough
awesome.
water. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not only that, that's gonna help people with seasickness and everything. So
It's gonna make it better for everyone. Like,
yeah,
exactly. Seasickness is the even like when you think about disability, it might not be in the way that most people think about it. It might be, getting seasickness out on a boat is a disability to participate in that activity. And so anyone who's got mobility issues or vertigo issues or inner ear issues, or any other impairment that has messes with people's balance, a stabilizer is going to have a huge impact, and it's something
it's
that
something
we're
that we're
over the
hoping.
winter we're gonna take care of.
Well, I do hope that you manage to get this in place because that's gonna open a lot of doors for a lot of people to be able to experience a shark. And I mean, I know, for instance, my wife, she used to scuba dive. She can't anymore because she has vertigo. So something like that is gonna be amazing. She would in a heartbeat, like, okay, let's go.
Amazing. Yeah, that's exactly what we hope. People that normally would have been like, oh no, I get vertigo, I get seasick, or I have this mobility issue, or I can't move around on this moving platform, will now essentially be able to go. That barrier is going to be removed for them.
Which is amazing. I actually have never heard of this gyroscope until I was talking to you on the phone the other day, and I'm super pumped because I know a lot of guys that they would probably do this in a heartbeat if they had a stable platform and a stable environment for it. Um, so it opens up such an amazing amount of opportunities for people of all types of disabilities. How
Absolutely.
much does something like this cost? Because this obviously is not a cheap venture to put one in,
Yeah, tens of thousands of dollars is just the equipment, and then about that much to install it as well. So that's the biggest hurdle. I'm applying for some grants to help offset some of those costs, because they're it's not insignificant at all.
oh yeah, I bet. And then on top of it, once you get it in, then you got to be able to promote people and get them convinced that hey, I'm going to be able to do this for 8 hours
Exactly.
and not have a really rough day at sea.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So, what when you're diving, doing the great white stuff in the fall, how much? What's the most number of great whites that you've had, and how big?
So we last year we did an exploratory trip to this new spot, and the most we had in a day was that we could count. There's maybe more, but that we were able to identify and count were five different great whites on a day, which is
5.
amazing. We had three at once, which is pretty
Wow.
incredible. And then one of the days there, we even had a shark that was somewhere between 18 and 20 feet in length. It was
18 and 20 feet.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. I'd never seen a great white that large. It was, it takes your breath away. It was beautiful, big, giant female, gorgeous. It was awesome.
Wow, that is incredible to be that close to a 20-foot great white. And that's you're a world shark expert, and that's the largest you've been close to?
I mean, been close to some big sharks, but yeah, I can't think of. I mean, definitely from the girth side, it was mind blowing. Yeah.
Wow. And how aggressive did they get around the cage at all? Like when it comes to like, or are they more curious?
We're luring them with bait. So we have a bait at the surface. We actually have a piece of seal blubber that we are luring the shark close to the cage and to try to get tagged and get identification marks. And that's what they're interested in, to be honest. They were not like they came as wherever you pulled that, we don't feed them, so we'd pull it away from them, but wherever we pulled it to, they would follow. So we could get them real close. But the trick is get them close enough so that you can get your photographs. You can try to put a tag on, but obviously we don't want the sharks to like bang into the shark cage and or
Yeah.
anything like that. Yeah.
So when do you guys actually have an onboard videographer that videos any of the dives that you can actually for somebody who doesn't have an ROR camera so they can buy a video experience after?
Yeah, yep. That is something we do. We're going to focus mostly on trying to document the sharks
Yep.
from the trip. Yeah.
Awesome. That's amazing. Um, so tell me a bit about your the other organizations that you're involved in, like with the Shark Research Foundation and the Black Girls Dive.
Yeah. So, Shark Research Foundation is a not-for-profit. It's actually a Florida registered not-for-profit, but the goal of that is to increase the knowledge of sharks through science and education in order to conserve sharks. And the scope of where the foundation operates is global. It's not tied to a specific area. Its just goal is creating new knowledge about sharks and educating people about sharks, communicating that knowledge through research and outreach and education. And so right now, the biggest projects are one, the work that we on the great whites in Atlantic Canada, um, Atlantic shark expeditions. The boat itself, it's an ecotourism boat, but it does research. It supports the research being done by the Shark Research Foundation. So the data goes to the Shark Research Foundation to analyze and work up and publish and share. And then you have one of the other projects that we're doing is actually another big project is looking at biodiversity hotspots of shark, not just sharks, but a variety of different species, but with a big focus on sharks along the U.S. Eastern Seaboard and Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico. Essentially, identify areas that are being used by multiple species through tracking, identify what threats they face in those areas, um, how they how their movements in these hotspots overlap with marine protected areas, to better understand how many of these hotspots, these biodiversity hotspots, are protected or where they're threatened, and then also to project how these patterns might change in the future with global warming. So, as the oceans get warmer, we know that the sharks are likely going to move where they go, as will other species. So, we're trying to use the data that we gather now to predict what these animals are going to do in the future and how they're going to respond to climate change, and try to provide these data to policymakers and decision makers and people who manage marine protected areas so that they can kind of make decisions today that are going to be climate ready for in years to come.
which is amazing that you guys do that. I mean, uh, sharks need to be protected. Absolutely. Um, One of the other things I was going to ask you is, since I have such a fascination with sharks, and I have a shark expert on the line here, what is more of an aggressive shark, a bull shark or a great white? Because I've heard multiple people say that, oh, bulls are definitely more aggressive.
Yeah, I mean, I would term aggressive is really hard to define because the sharks don't show the aggression in the way like a human is gives aggression. I would say when people think of aggression, I think of sharks like coming towards you and maybe how willing they are to get close to you and then kind of invade your personal space. And I would be more uncomfortable around, outside of a cage, swimming around a great white than I would be a bull shark. I've dove with bull sharks many times, including at night, and um, they're sneaky in the sense that they don't like charge in, and they really just they're very cautious around people. I think they need time to work up the courage to come in um, to invade your personal space. They're more cunning in that way. I think is that they really like to sneak up on you and let try to if you're looking at them, they kind of keep their distance. I think they're waiting for you to kind of let up your guard. Um, I think in the case with bull sharks, why many people who have negative shark encounters have to be with bull sharks because bull sharks inhabit warm waters where there's more people in the water, and often they like really murky water, like which you find in estuaries. That you know that's going to be situations where it's going to be hard to see the sharks because the water's murky, and they're in areas that are warm where people like to get in the water, and they can do damage if they end up biting you. Also harder for the shark, for bull sharks you know to see what they're biting if the water's murky. Great whites, on the other hand, they're I think they're more curious. They're also bolder for sure. Um, they generally try to avoid people and activities. I think they get bothered by humans like activities like boats or other things. But if they are curious by it, they're so big that they don't really have a fear of hurting themselves. I would say their personal space, they don't really have a personal space in that sense because they're not really worried about something hurting them. So like
Yeah,
they just come right in. And the thing about great whites is that sometimes you can't see them coming. So like they're so stealthy, much more stealthy than a bull shark. And so like I've been in a cage before and looking left, looking right, being in having my head on a swivel and I see nothing, 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 and then there's a great white right in front of me. I'm like, how did it get there? I was just looking at that spot. I've never had that with a bull shark. With a bull shark, I see them coming in closer and closer, closer. The great white, it's like nothing, 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 and they're in front of me. And
really.
that is to me the scary part. I don't like to be surprised when I'm underwater by a shark. And so I think I don't, I think that is something they do. And the other thing is that they're very visual, great whites, where a lot of other sharks I think they rely a lot more. They put a greater emphasis on their smell, where great whites rely on smell definitely. That's probably the most important sense, as in all sharks. But they also, I think, great whites put a little more reliance on vision than other sharks. So if you have if you've got bait and you're putting out a smell trail, all the other sharks, including all the other shark species, including bull sharks, are usually going to come in the direction of the scent trail. They're always going to work up the scent trail. And so if you are looking down the scent trail, you'll know that's the direction that these sharks are coming from. A great white might originally approach something via the scent trail. But once they make the visual connection of what is making the smell, they'll approach from other angles where, and so they're it's much harder to kind of know which direction they're going to come from. Where a bull shark, even if they make that visual connection, they'll circle back and come up the scent trail again. Where white sharks might just come from the other direction.
Wow, that's amazing. So when it comes to shark diving and stuff, what's your opinion on how they do all these shark feeds down in like the Bahamas and stuff? Is this a good thing or is it a bad thing?
Well, I think anytime I think shark dive tourism is a good thing, and I might be biased, but I think it one of the big things it does is there's a lot of advantages. It shows a live shark is worth more than a dead shark, and right now the places that protect sharks are mm, certainly all the places that rely on sharks for the economy, where sharks are contributing, live sharks through tourism are contributing a lot to the economy. Those places sharks are protected. And it also shows that, people getting to swim with these sharks, it turns a lot of these people who might be doing it for the thrill end up becoming in love with sharks and becoming huge advocates. So just the experience creates, turns people, shifts their behaviors into becoming the biggest advocates for sharks. And then also, in a lot of places where there is shark tourism, the people who run the shark tourism, those are providing alternative livelihoods to, for example, fishing for sharks. And then it also, by people having these safe encounters for sharks frequently, it shows that these sharks aren't mindless killers either. So I think there's a lot of positives. That being said, if done irresponsibly, it could be very bad for sharks because, you know, years and years and decades of shark conservation work or anything, efforts to show sharks in a positive light and that they're not, these animals that are these, man eaters as portrayed in the media. If there's just one shark bite, it can undo all of that positive because it's the shark bite that gets all the headlines. And so, in places where, I think the tourism is not done by experienced people in a way that is um, not, I don't want to say regulated, but certainly responsible in a way under, certain protocols to enhance safety and respect the sharks. I think it could be a problem. And I think when it comes to feeding sharks, I personally think that it's better to attract sharks with the smell than to feed them. And if you do feed them, I think, I don't see an issue with that when it's done in a limited way, because as long as you're not, um, giving them enough that's like a constant reward that's habituating them, or in a situation where they're getting their energy needs, right? I mean, if there's a lot of sharks, giving a few some baits is not going to make a big difference. Um, but I think, like hand feeding the sharks, you're putting yourself. I think I'm personally not a fan of hand feeding. I think if you can feed them with like a tool or something like that, it's a lot better. Not to say that hand feeding them is going to necessarily associate the diver with the food, but I think it's these sharks are smart. I think if you can, you know, you don't want to, just common sense activities. If you just have, a pole or something else or tongs to feed the sharks, that's going to be a lot safer for you. And again, it's another, I would say, separation between the diver themselves and the shark in terms of even what the shark experiences. But I tend to think that it's better to bait the sharks with smell, and then rather than having people hand feed them, constantly. And but I don't want to use this podcast to talk about what I believe is responsible and irresponsible shark diving. I guess what I want to say is that there's a way to do it in a responsible way, and there's an irresponsible way. And I think the people that have been doing it for a long time, particularly, generally are the ones that you know, uh, ones that are more reputable and certainly doing it in a more responsible way.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I've anytime that I've heard of any type of incident of somebody getting bit or something when it has been doing a shark dive, generally it's because they broke protocol on what
Hmm.
the dive operator set up.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
I mean, if you're gonna play with sharks, then you better listen to the dive master.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's unfortunately sometimes it takes those things to happen before people pay attention to the rules. But it's I think it's now on social media there's when there's so much that gets information and gets spread quickly that if you see someone doing something, feeding sharks, you think that you can do it as well. But they don't really know the years of training and that goes into that, or the understanding of the animal's behavior that goes into there. So um, you really need to understand the animals before you can start running an operation where you're going to involve bait or start feeding the sharks.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I am super excited to get the chance to come out and dive on your boat this year and and get to work with you, a world leading shark expert.
Yeah, we'd love that. And as like I said, we'd love to make our platform more accessible. So any way we can learn from that community that you I think have outreach to not only tell them about what we're doing, but also to help them teach us how to be more accessible as well.
I actually have some before I got back into motocross, how I got hurt actually, I used to be into motocross racing before I got back into diving. And I actually rode adapt the motocross for a bit. So I have some contacts with some pretty crazy adaptive athletes, to say the least, that I've been having a few conversations with to try and get them to convince them into this. So I think I've actually got a couple possibly good candidates to come out for you to promote this.
Great, great. Yeah, and to also for them to give us some tips on how to do things in a way that is more accessible for sure.
Oh, exactly. Which I mean, that's the whole point of my podcast, especially is to make people aware of the benefits of diving, how good it is for people with disabilities mentally, and just to be able to break through barriers that you normally cannot do on land.
Exactly.
So, tell me just briefly a bit about your Black Girls Dive Foundation.
So that is it's a pretty amazing group. It's a US based nonprofit where they are trying to provide opportunities for youth, particularly black minority girls, to go out in the ocean, learn how to dive, participate in scuba diving, and also marine science. And so they have like curriculums and various, I would say, like courses uh, and curricula focus on aspects of obtaining knowledge about marine science, but also getting trained up in diving and scientific diving. And I have been involved with Black Girls Dive Foundation for a while, particularly educating girls about sharks and also giving experience in diving with sharks, and also importantly giving experience in doing shark research and getting involved with shark tagging. And so I, for example, have brought them out on boats to be involved with shark tagging. I've taught them in class like how to analyze shark tracking data using GIS. And I also helped organize a trip to bring the girls to Bimini, Bahamas, to go diving out there with sharks, and gave them lectures while we're out there. So, yeah, it's a fantastic organization that promotes the shark diving in youth, particularly in Black girls.
That's amazing. That's a really cool program to do. Um,
And
and
it's free to the girls, like and they get this free experience and exposure to diving, and certainly the group reaches a demographics of the population that usually I would say culturally don't don't go diving a lot. So it's great outreach and great education to people that sometimes would otherwise not be going diving.
which is amazing because I mean, diving, let's face it, it's not a cheap sport to
No.
get into by any means. And especially if you're a disabled person or a person of minority,
Yeah.
possibly, or whatever, it's not a cheap thing to get into. And especially, well, one thing I found from doing research for this podcast actually is the lack of support there is for people who want to be able to scuba dive that are disabled or have
Yeah.
issues. There's
Yeah.
none.
No.
There's there's one instructor in Canada, Hubert Chrétien, who is absolutely slammed. You couldn't get him to teach another student for years coming up, because he just can't. And in the States, you've got Jim Elliott with Dive Hard. I don't know if you've heard of Dive Hard or not. They're an amazing program. Actually, I've just been talking to Jim the last couple of days. Check out, anybody who's watching, check out diveheart.org. These guys actually go and train disabled divers of all types. They have paraplegics, everything. They actually take them on trips down to Cozumel uh,
Amazing.
every year. Yeah, they're fantastic. They're based out of Chicago. They're actually going to be building a 150-foot deep training pool to be
Amazing.
able to train divers, which is going to be amazing, especially when it comes to disabilities and be able to getting more practice in the water. So it's
Yeah.
phenomenal. I'm actually going to get him on the show,
Hmm.
and in the next couple of days, actually, we're going to be interviewing. So I'm definitely going to put him in touch with you as well
Please.
for this, because I think it'd be an amazing experience for some of their guys.
Amazing. I would love
So,
that. Thank you.
oh, no problem. And by the way, the links are all going to be down below the video here for all of Dr. Neil's organizations. And thank you very much, Dr. Neil. I have really appreciated this today. It's been awesome talking to you, and I cannot wait to come out and dive with you this summer.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Yeah, it's really cool to have the opportunity to speak to you and your community.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you very much.
Cool. Thank you.
And remember, everybody, like, subscribe, and donate so that way I can go out and make more great content for you. And see you next time on the DeadfootDiver podcast.